here, maybe I should sort of add that that's something that Sisters of Frida have been doing is getting involved with UN instruments like CEDAW, which stands for the Convention of Elimination of All Forms of Elimination Against Women, and yes, United Nations. And Eleanor and I went to Geneva last year because we thought it was important to have a visible presence of disabled women. And now we're also involved in the writing of the shadow report for the Convention of Rights for Disabled Women, disabled people. And also we've been, for some reason, very honored that quite a few organizations of sort of social justice have also invited us to go along, perhaps because there are not that many organizations of just disabled women. So when we were talking, we said it'd be good to have some kind of network that would be set up from this. You know, this would be the sort of nucleus or whatever you call it to start off something, perhaps. What would you like to sort of, you know, to grow from this? Or is that a difficult question?
I mean, I think it depends on the context. It depends what you're doing. I mean, I just want to go back to something which I forgot to mention, which is important though, which was that I was one of the founder members of something called the Campaign for Accessible Transport, and it was the second actually. There was a bit of direct action that happened once at the Elephant and Castle, but it was a direct action group of disabled people who campaigned around accessible transport. And I think just it kind of overlaps with your question really, because it's about, I think, how we do stuff. I learned an enormous amount from doing that, because it was about trying to work together in a way to do direct action, which is pretty scary, particularly if you've never done it before. I had, but most of the people in the group hadn't, and I hadn't done it as a disabled woman. And trying to do it in a way that's inclusive. And we did manage to develop something which gave people a choice about how they got involved, what they did, whether they chained themselves to a bus, whether they got themselves arrested. It's not rocket science, and it's probably not great news, sort of new news to those of you who are involved now in direct action, but it was quite groundbreaking, and it had an impact way beyond its number of people. I'm on the mailing list. There was 100 of us on the mailing list, but you can block the whole of central London with 50 people, particularly if they're wheelchair users. And at the time, the police didn't know how to arrest us, and there weren't any accessible police stations in central London. I'm afraid there are now, so it doesn't work anymore. Yeah, and they're a bit better at it than they used to be. I must admit, I've been an advisor to the Metropolitan Police, so but I didn't tell them how to do some of it, I must say, get some of it quiet. But I think in terms of networking, I think the important thing is about, it's changed now. There's a lot of stuff online. I'm useless at Facebook, but I think that the kind of exchange of ideas, of impressions, of thoughts, of trying to educate each other and trying to understand how we develop inclusive networks is really important, and there's the capacity for doing that because we can do a lot of this online. You don't have to be in the same room, and it really does make a difference. You don't have to have a room, you can have it online, and you can cool down before you have a go at someone, which is really helpful, really. All those feminist conferences where we kind of threw things at each other, I think it's really nice. Sometimes it's very useful to have a bit of time to think. So I think for me personally, because I work on violence against women and in brackets disabled men occasionally, it's having a network which is about reinforcing the feminism of it, the gender-based stuff, the inclusive stuff, the intersectionality, which actually allows me to put things in context. I think on a purely personal level, the research that I'm involved in, European research on violence against disabled women, the fact of going to Vienna last summer and actually being with a bunch of feminists who are some disabled, some not, who were working on this issue and who were thinking about the issues in great detail. Some were activists. Some of the disabled women were doing some extraordinary kind of daring stuff around sexuality in places like Austria, in a country where thousands and thousands of disabled people are still locked up in institutions. They're still building institutions, you know, and she's going into institutions to talk about sexuality with very little support. You know, just being able to be inspired by what other people are doing, but also being able to learn from that and to energise each other, I think is really important. And that includes, you know, I think there is a need for a network of disabled women, but there's a need for a wider debate and a wider exchange of experiences and of expertise around activism that is really needed. But in order to do that, we need, you know, the mainstream events to be inclusive. You know, I'm partially deaf. If I don't have, at a big event, if I don't have subtitles to what everybody's saying, I might as well not be there. I've been in the same situation as Pauline. So, you know, those sorts of things are really important, and we have to think about that before we even get together, you know. But from that point of view, the internet's really useful. So I'll shut up now.
Thank you.